Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. I've done everything to fix my writing and publication problem. Have you ever had this thought? Have you ever said to yourself, kind of thrown your arms up in the air and said, well, I've tried everything, and kind of given up on yourself? That's what I want to talk about today on the podcast. Welcome. This is Academic Writing Amplified, and I'm Kathy Mazek from Scholar's Voice. Now, I have heard this from many people who have been thinking about our programs, but not joining. A lot of times I hear from people who are thinking about, for example, our Navigate program, that they have been listening to the podcast for a long time and they've tried the things in the podcast, or that they've read my book. Yay, thanks for reading my book. And they've tried the things in my book and that they've learned so much, but they really haven't made the core shift that they need to make in order to really solve or really resolve their writing and publication problem. And so because they've kind of tried a bunch of different things, and maybe besides my book, maybe you've read other academic writing books, maybe you've read other people's blogs, you've maybe tried a ton of productivity books, right? There's so many productivity books out there. Maybe productivity is what I need to be more productive. And so you're hesitant to invest in a true program because of a lot of reasons. Let's review some. Okay, so one reason, the main reason we're talking about today, is that you feel like you've already tried things that haven't worked. So I just want to stick with that line of thinking, because you might think that you've done everything. But today, I really want to focus on what is the difference between listening to a podcast, reading books, trying to fix your writing and publication problem, and then investing in a program to solve this problem. And it has to do, with a couple of things. I don't know if you are like this. This is what happens to me. I read a lot. And if I read a book that's a self-help book, right? It's about trying to change something. Sometimes if I do all the exercises in the book and everything, maybe it will actually change my practice. And there's lots of books that have changed my mindset or have changed my thinking about things. So Cal Newport's Deep Work really changed the way I thought about how we organize work. The Slow Professor is also a book that influenced me so much, just in terms of both of those books kind of were able to put into words phenomenon that I was seeing. And then, so that gave me tools to continue to talk about it with people. So that was really helpful. So reading books can be helpful, right? And especially if there's exercises in those books, you might do it for a while and maybe it will stick, but many times it doesn't stick. And I think the reason for that, and even with my own book is meant to be an introduction to the mindset shifts that you have to start to make if you want to make time to write, which is the very core of what our programs are about. But I remember when I sat down to write the book and plan the book, I was oh, I'm going to put my whole Navigate program into this book. And it was such a naive thing to think. One, the book would be so long. And also the kinds of things you do in the Navigate program they don't lend themselves to just a book write-up. And that is why we have coaching that goes along with the material, the video material and audio material in our Navigate program and in all of our programs, that there is a live component to it. There is this interaction, there is community, there's a professional coach who is helping you to do or supporting you through doing the work of the program. And I don't think the book does that. Like, even though I'm totally want you to read the book and I think that it will help you, it's not going to fix your writing and publication problem. So if you're telling yourself, oh, I read Kathy's book, so she doesn't really have anything else to offer, or like, I read Kathy's book and I failed at implementing the things that she talked about. If that's what you're thinking, that is erroneous thinking. Okay, we're going to keep going down this line and figure this out. So the other thing that you might have seen, or you might have even participated in, productivity advice, right? Sometimes our universities will bring people to campus virtually or in person, and we'll learn some kind of productivity hacks or things like that. Maybe you've started to follow a YouTube channel that's about that, or you've read a book like Atomic Habits, which is one of Gina's favorite books about productivity. And they do help you, right? They do help you. But the difference between like reading a book and really changing your practices, I think really involves other people, right? Other supportive people who are doing it alongside of you, or a person like a coach who can help you get through your own obstacles about that thing. So if you're thinking, I've done everything to fix my writing and publication problem. And what you mean by everything is that you've read some books and you've tried some things that you learned in those books, or you listen to my podcast or other people's podcasts. And so you're familiar with the kinds of things that we talk about. That is not enough. Okay. And so I want to think now about how valuable you are and how valuable the work that you do is. So I had a podcast earlier this month that was about this idea. Like, I was hearing from a lot of people, oh, $4,500 is too much to spend on professional development. And I would love for you to go back to that podcast episode and listen to it, because in there, I really dig into thinking about the value of your work, your position, and yourself. There is really nothing more valuable than your ability to like do this amazing work that you're doing. And if you don't take care of yourself, the road that many people are headed down is a road towards burnout. And that's not their fault. Like, it's not your fault if you've had a burnout. I've had a burnout. If you're working yourself so hard that you're starting to think, maybe academia isn't for me, that's not your fault. We're all in academia being overworked and under-supported. And I don't think it should be normal. I think it's normalized, not normal, but normalized, that everybody is overly busy. Everybody is doing too many things, right? And too many disparate things, like things that don't go together. And as soon as you prove yourself like worthy of responsibility, you continue to get more and more responsibilities like piled onto you, right? And what happens is, by the time that we get to like around tenure, or especially like if we make tenure and it's like right after tenure, we are so overburdened with things that are no longer our passionate interest, or things that are actually taking away from the unique contribution that we're trying to make in the world, like things that are pulling at that and unraveling it, that we're like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I working so many hours and I don't even get to work on the thing that I love? Or even like, to say it from a different perspective, I don't even get to work on the thing that is my unique contribution, right? I'm bogged down with doing the things that anybody else could do. I'm teaching the classes, I'm running the meetings, but I'm not contributing to knowledge making in the way that I want to, or I'm not contributing to change in the world in the way that I want to. And if you are like that, then it is absolutely critical that you get some kind of support. Now, in academia, I think that coaching is becoming more and more known about and acceptable. Like, definitely, we're seeing inside of my business, we're seeing universities that have budgets very open to coaching, like very open to paying for coaching programs for their faculty. So sometimes for universities that have a tighter purse strings, you have to do more convincing. But the top, like the universities who are research ones and who are trying to create competitive programs and have world-class faculty, they are investing in coaching. Like it isn't a big ask for many of those universities to fund coaching programs for their faculty. So I think you can see that as like one window into a real change in our fields or a real change in our industry. And that is that coaching is something that is acceptable. It's something that people acknowledge, even if and especially if you are already productive and that your university already sees you as valuable and you are already making big strides, that even more so you should have coaching because you could be doing everything in a much more sustainable way if you had coaching. And so going back to the title of this episode, right? I've done everything to fix my writing and publication problem. I want to ask you some questions to see if that's like really true. All right. So this is like a moment of let's just like face facts or let's just like really say what it is that's keeping you from enrolling in a coaching program like Navigate. What is it that's really stopping you? Because I've tried everything is probably just a mask for something else. So here's the questions. The question is like, how far are you willing to go to create what you want to create in the world? How much do you really want to make things different for yourself in terms of how your career is structured and also for your field and for the contribution that you're trying to make? How much do you want to make things different? Another question, what are you willing to settle for? And what have you been settling for? So think about that for a minute. Like, have you been settling for writing with scraps of time? Have you settled for 60 to 80-hour work weeks? Have you settled for only writing on the weekends because that's the only time you can get to it? If you're settling for that kind of career, or have you settled for leaving your research at the door and just not doing it, like sitting on piles of data unanalyzed because you're like, well, I've tried everything. So if you're doing that, you're definitely settling. Like you have more to offer and you need support in order to be able to offer it, right? Then the last question is, what are you willing to fight for, right? What kind of a career are you willing to fight for? When you got into the scholarly life, what was it that you wanted it to be like? Like, I actually want you to answer that question, like write it down. And don't even answer the version of like what I saw my advisor do. I want to know, what do you really want it to be like to live the scholarly life? What do you want to have your every day and every week look like? Because at the end of the day, your career is the sum of your days. So how you're spending your days, your every day, your typical Monday, typical Tuesday, typical Wednesday, is how you are spending your career. That is what it is. So if you want something more for yourself and you're not willing to settle, then you need to stop using the excuse of I've done everything or I've tried everything to fix this writing and publication problem. I've tried everything to make time to write. I've tried everything to get publications out and I can't. That is like an argument with yourself that you are losing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, who are you trying to convince with this argument that you've tried everything, right? And what are you settling for And what are you willing to fight for? What kind of career are you willing to fight for? I think there's like so much joy in writing and publishing. I actually think there's so much joy in it. Yes, there's like angst and anxiety and there's stress and so many things. But for the people who have like figured out how to make it like a continuing part of their scholarly practice, it is a joyful thing to see your work in the world. It is a joyful thing to be desired for your work, to be sought after for your work, to be the person who like people are coming up to after giving a conference paper. Oh, I read your paper about this and I'm so excited about what you're going to do next. Or I have this question for you. It's so satisfying and joyful to have graduate students pursue you and want to work with you because they know the scholarly work that you are trying to do in the world, that you are putting out into the world. All of that is joyful and satisfying. And if you are accomplishing all of those things while you are driving yourself into the ground because you are working so many hours, then that is not going to last. So you really want to find a sustainable way to incorporate writing into the center of your career, which we talk about a lot. I'm pretty sure I have an episode about that specifically. But what I mean is like, if the core of what you are trying to accomplish as a scholar involves getting your scholarly voice in the world, right? Publishing your research, then you need to figure out how to put it inside your days, not in the evenings, not on the weekends. You need to figure out how to put it inside your weekly practice. It can't be something that's on the sidelines. It has to be central. The writing has to be central so the publishing can be central so that you can get what you want from your career and make the difference in the world that you want to make. So if you've been saying to yourself, I've done everything to fix my writing and publication problem, but you haven't invested in a coaching program, or maybe you invested in a coaching program and didn't do it. Yeah, this is something that people do. They invest in a program and they don't actually do the actions of the program. One of the reasons that we have created a more rigorous application process for our Navigate program is because we want people who really want to get in, who really are going to do it. We don't want people who are going to buy it and then say, I bought it, so I've done everything I can to fix my writing and publication process. No, buying it doesn't fix the problem. The exchange of money is important. Like the investment in yourself is absolutely important, but the investment doesn't create the result that you want. Doing the program creates the result that you want. So I'm going to tell you the promise of our Navigate program that is the anchor that we used to design the program. It is Navigate helps tenure track women and non-binary professors with a disruptive perspective on their field to publish their backlog of papers so that their voice can have the impact they know is possible. So I just want to say, dear listeners, if you are there thinking, I know I could have more impact, I know that that's possible for me. If you're thinking, oh, I got that backlog of papers. If it was out there, I could be in like this up-leveled place in my career, right? If I had those papers out, I could be writing on the next step thing. I could be writing grants to fund the next stage of my line of research. If you are a person with a disruptive perspective on your field, and by this, I mean that you are part of the modern generation of scholars and academics who are often living at the intersection of fields. So you're not siloed in one disciplinary area, but you are often, most of our clients have this kind of disruptive perspective. They're in a certain disciplinary area, but they have kind of almost an outsider's perspective, or they combine disciplines in a way. They're at the intersection of fields in a really interesting way, which to me is the direction that everything is going. So this idea of like pure disciplinarity is not going to be a thing, if it even is still a thing anywhere. So a lot of our clients, we find, have this very disruptive perspective on their field. They're like doing research that when it gets out there is going to change the conversation. And that's what makes doing this work of coaching like so exciting, because to me, and I told you in the description of this episode, I said that you might think you've done everything, but in this video, I'll tell you the missing piece. And there's actually two missing pieces. The main one, though, is group coaching. That is the thing that gets people past the obstacles that they feel when they start to implement new practices, is the group coaching. And the corollary to that, or maybe I should even say it's the coaching and the group are the two things. So the coaching, that you have like an expert coach helping you to get over the obstacles that come up when you try to do your career in a way you've never seen it done before. Because in our programs, we teach a disruptive, actually, a perspective on how to manage your academic career. And it's helpful to have a coach when you are learning about how to implement this very different idea, different from what you've seen probably from your advisor, a different way. That's why the company is called Scholar's Voice, and it's a different way to do academia. Like, we're teaching a different way to do it, an equally, if not more successful way to do it, but a different way to do it. And as you're learning that different way to do academia, want a way that centers your writing and treats you like a human and like will lead to the result that you want, which is publications. As you're doing that, you're going to resist some things. You're going to be like, I can't do that. Oh my gosh, no. And then you're going to come to a coaching call and we'll coach you through it. And we'll show you how you can adapt what we teach in a way that is for you. You don't have to go at a certain speed in our programs in terms of adopting our methods. Sometimes it takes people a little longer, a little shorter. It just, it's all about like, I'm ready or I'm not to like really do things differently. And that really takes coaching. And then the group part, okay, the corollary part to it is that you're doing it together with other people who are in the same situation with you. Like, wouldn't you like to be in a room full of tenure track women and non-binary professors with a disruptive perspective on their field, right? Who want to publish their backload of papers so that their voice can be heard and have the impact that they know is possible. Like, that sounds like a really cool group of people to be around. And everybody's working through the same thing that you are. And that's what helps you make a transformation in your scholarly career, is that other people around you are in the same boat as you and they're doing it together with you. So the group coaching has two important parts to it, the group part and the coaching part. I hope that this has helped you to think about, if you've ever had that thought of, I've done everything to fix my writing and publication problem, I want you to go back to those questions. I'll read them to you again. I'll leave you with these questions, which are, how far are you willing to go? How far are you willing to go to get what you want in your career? How much do you want to make things different? How much do you want to do things differently, right? How much you want this whole thing to feel much better and be different? What are you willing to settle for? Or what are you settling for right now? And then what are you willing to fight for? Have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening. Bye. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.